everybody, welcome back to Screenstars and welcome to another PlayStation review. Today I'm taking a look at Punch Club 2 Fast Forward on the PlayStation 5. Now this is a sequel to a popular game that came out a few years ago called Punch Club. Essentially it is like a fighting management sim with a few RPG elements thrown into it, and the sequel is very much more of the same. It's just bigger, if you like. Now it's set in the future this time. You play a character who essentially is trying to find out what happened to his father. His father was this legendary fighter, and he's trying to figure out what happened to him. Now, along the way, he gets into all sorts of little quests and adventures, and right at the core of that is him learning to be a fighter. So very much like the first one, the game will consist of you kind of training and building up your strength and getting new moves to add to your repertoire so that you can take on fights, get better, climb the ladder, and as the game goes on, learn more about the main story, which is what's happened to your father. Now, you go about this a number of ways. It's not just a fighting game. In fact, quite early on in this game, there's very little fighting at all. The early gameplay loop in this, very similar to the first one if you played that, is you spend much of your time working. So there are jobs that you can take in this game. There's like jobs you can take during the day, there's jobs you can take in the evening, and there's jobs you can take during the night. And if you balance your energy and your food just right, you could do each of them every day, kind of. So the early part of the game consists of you going to your job, earning money. As you progress through your jobs, you can get promotions and things like that, but we'll talk about that a little bit more. And then you need money then to buy food. Because your appetite will drop and you need to start eating and putting food in, and sleeping. So you balance the early part of the game is basically working, eating food, and sleeping, and as and when you can afford it, doing the odd training session at the gym. Because the only access you've got to training at home in the early part of the game is press-ups. Again, very similar to the first one. But at home, you've got a load of broken exercise equipment. There are opportunities in the game where you can repair those exercise equipments, but they cost a fair bit of money. Certainly in the early parts of the game, because money's hard to come by early on. So it does take quite a while for you to unlock them. And then once you do, your training then pretty much becomes free. At the game at the start, you kind of go to the gym, and it's kind of a sci-fi gym sort of thing. As you can see here, you go in there, you kind of get in a booth, and it kind of simulates the training for you. And the whole sci-fi element here might seem a bit odd, and it did to me when I first started playing it, but it's actually quite fun. I mean, it's got a good sense of humour, this game. It pokes fun at familiar sci-fi franchises that you'll all be aware of. There's quite a few in here. For example, one of the jobs that you go to, it's like working at a noodle bar, and the guy sat at the noodle bar constantly is obviously meant to be from Blade Runner, the Harrison Ford character Decker from Blade Runner. So it does have a bit of a fun sense of humour going on here. Now, you kind of earn money, basically, or earn points by doing like fights in this game. And to get a fight, you basically have to sign up to this fight league, and there's a few different fight leagues. And the first one you sign up to, and each of them has their own rankings, and there's quite a few fighters in this, so it feels a bit more structured than the first game, in a sense of the fights that you're taking on here. There's like different leagues and rankings in that league. So you every couple of days in this game, you get the opportunity to sign up to a fight. So you'll go in, you'll sign up, and you'll choose your next fight, and then a couple of days later the fight will take place, which gives you a bit of time to train and kind of make sure your energy's right and all that kind of stuff. Because if you go into a fight with your energy levels really low, so on and so forth, then it puts you at a disadvantage at the fight. Now the fights are very simple. You don't do anything in these fights. All you need to make sure before the fight is that you are making sure you put in the skills that you want your fighter to use in the fight, and you're choosing your fight style. Now, early in the game, you don't have access to any fight styles, just one basically, which is quite a balanced one. And then as you win promotions for your jobs, you have to then take on a fight. If you win that fight, then you're given access to a new fight style. And I'm not sure if there's 4 or 5 fight styles to choose from. And the fight styles are nothing major or anything. They basically consist of like a balanced approach to the fight, an attacking approach to the fight, a defensive approach to the fight. But they like I say, you get to choose which one. And some of them will give you, if you choose a defensive style, for example, you don't have as many attacking moves you can choose from, but you've got far more defensive capabilities than you would in some of the other fight styles. So depending on who you're fighting, you could choose a different approach. To be honest, once I unlocked it, my main approach was to essentially go into the fights with like the strong style, I think it's called, which is like the more aggressive style, and that has done quite well for me. I'm not going to lie. Now, with this being like a fighting RPG, there's like little storylines that you can take part in. Some of them are quite silly, some of them are a little bit of fun. And it gives you like a map in your inventory sort of thing. You can it tells you what you should be doing next to progress through the story. And it could be get a videotape for your neighbour. It could be get some headache tablets for your mother. There's nothing major here. And then once you do that, it will progress you through the story. And that's how you kind of move on here. So it's... How really would I advise you go? Is this really a game that you guys should be buying? I would suggest that if you've played and completed the first one, which I have, and I have reviewed it on the channel, then I would say yes. I think this is definitely worth a pick up and play for sure. It's I think I paid about £15 for this in the UK. It is a bigger game than the first one. There's more places to visit on the map. There's more. It feels like the fights are a bit more structured. It feels more like a fight management game than the first one. But if this sort of game doesn't interest you, then I don't imagine this is going to sell itself to you either. And in that case, if you like fighting games but you're not really sure about the management side of it, I would definitely advise maybe waiting for a sale for this one. So it's really no more complex than that. It is very, very simple to play. There's no voice acting going on here. It's all text based, but that sense of humor does shine through in the game. For me, I've never really been a huge fan of like pixel games, but I do like the way this game looks. I like the way this game is structured. It's very simple to play, and once you get over that early gameplay loop, which just feels like it's endless, working, eating, sleeping, and then the occasional training session. Once you get over that loop and you start really getting into the game, especially when you start climbing the rankings and stuff, the game massively improves and it feels much more satisfying. So it's a 7 out of 10 for me, this one. This is quite a lot of fun to play. It's fairly cheap to pick up and play. And definitely fans of the first one, I don't think will be disappointed with this one. So I hope you enjoyed the review, guys. I hope you found it useful. I'll be back with more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.